providers. Mr. Odare came to us, he actually started a month ago tomorrow, April 23rd, I believe was when he started. He came to us from Southside Regional, and we can thank Angela, one of my nurses that's sitting right back there in the middle of the room. She works at Southside Regional part-time, and she told him about a job opening that we had here and twisted his arm, so he came to work with us. And I'm going to let him tell you more about his background, and then he's also going to do some educational things. So, Fred, it's all yours.
All right, I guess I'll start at the beginning. As a PA, we are considered what's called a mid-level provider. We specialize basically in primary care, but in the last 10 years, PAs have begun to branch out in all kinds of specialties. I've always preferred emergency medicine or family medicine. As a physician assistant, basically our training, back during the Vietnam War, the Navy had all these corpsmen who were basically combat-trained surgeons in the field and taking care of wounded Marines. And Eugene Stead was a doctor down at Duke, and he decided they had all these highly trained, highly skilled people who weren't allowed to do anything except drive an ambulance when they came home. So he developed the PA profession. And he started the first program at Duke with 8 Navy corpsmen who came back from Vietnam. He put them through a 2-year abbreviated medical school, and when they graduated, they went out and they became licensed to practice medicine under the supervision of another doctor. The difference between a PA and a nurse practitioners have to have a collaborative agreement with the physician. The PA has to work under the supervision of the physician. There's not a lot of difference in that other than the way the Board of Medicine looks at it. And that's the biggest thing is I cannot go out and hang a shingle on my own, which in this day and age nobody would want to do anyway, but we just have to work in collaboration with the physician. I've been practicing medicine for 28 years. I was not a military medical person. My experience in the military, I did 6 years in the Marine Corps as an infantryman back in Vietnam. After that, I was a police officer and became injured and medically retired from the Petersburg Police Department and had to have a new career. So I went back to school and basically was pre-med. The PA profession I had never heard of, and when I was applying to medical school and looking at 4 more years of school and 4 more years of residency, somebody said, well, have you thought about being a PA? And since I was older and already had an ex-wife and child support payments, 2 years of school instead of 4 looked a lot more attractive. So I went to the PA program, have never regretted it, never looked back. The difference in what I do and what a physician does is minimal. It's always nice to be able to step back and say, hey doc, this is your case because I'm not comfortable with it. It's probably the best part about being a PA. But we handle all kinds of problems. We handle acute illnesses, acute problems, chronic illnesses and chronic problems. If you come in the office and see me, you'll probably wonder what the difference is between the PA and the MD, and the big thing is that they've had 2 more years of school than we did. I did about 4 years of undergraduate work at University of Maryland, and then went to Johns Hopkins for my PA training up in Baltimore. We trained with all of the residents at the Johns Hopkins Family Medicine and Emergency Medicine program. So we got pretty much the same training.
I'm sorry, I'm going to put a little more volume here.
The same training and education, just a little bit abbreviated with 2 less years of clinical education in the classroom. After 28 years of practice, I've done the last 18 years at the ER at Southside Regional. I've become certified for all kinds of emergency procedures up there. I am happy to take care of emergencies, but glad to be out of the emergency room. The other love I had was family medicine. I've been involved in family medicine from the very beginning. Even when I was in the emergency room, I still was part-time or full-time, depending on the time of my career, working in family medicine up in Richmond and Colonial Heights, and I'm thrilled to be back in family medicine here. It's nice to not be in the ER and have nights and weekends for now free. So I'm here. Angela brought me down. She may be sorry one day, I don't know, but glad to be here. It's a wonderful practice. Dr. Thien and Dr. Zoll are wonderful to work with. Rosemary's terrific as far as the way the practice is run. So that's it in a nutshell as far as my history and as far as PAs. I don't know of any others around here right now, but they're becoming more and more popular in Virginia. Virginia is one of the last states to embrace the PA profession, so it's reasonably new here. We write prescriptions, order labs, see patients. If you have an issue that involves more care than what we can provide, there's always a doctor standing by or close by to take over the case. Any questions about PAs? Any questions about me? Okay, they asked me to prepare something on Lyme's disease and tick-borne illnesses. Virginia has recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, become one of the biggest increasing Lyme's disease states in the country. Lyme's disease is a New England disease that started in a place called Lymes, Connecticut. Little town up there where it was first discovered. It's a tick-borne illness like Rocky Mountain spotted fever and a couple of other diseases. Lyme's disease itself is a minor illness unless it's not caught and treated. It's easily cured if you catch it early and treat it. In Virginia, it really wasn't here except in very minimal cases over the last 10 years. And in the last 2 or 3 years, it has really begun to climb. Last year, there were 1,023 cases in Virginia of Lyme's disease. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is a more serious illness, but also a tick-borne illness, there were 230 cases. So it's less predominant, but it's still here. The deer tick transmits Lyme's disease. The deer tick is a very, very, very small tick. People sometimes call them seed ticks. You may not even notice that you have them on you. The problem with Lyme's disease is people will come in and they'll have all the symptoms and you want to test them for Lyme's disease and they'll say, oh, I wasn't bitten by a tick. Deer ticks aren't like dog ticks. Dog ticks will bite you. They got a good thing going. They're not going to let go. They'll grow and suck blood and get big, and you got to pull them off. Deer ticks will feed and release. They'll eat and go. If you go fishing, you go out in the woods, you spend any time in tall grass, you can get these deer ticks on you. In the springtime, the nymphs are the biggest problem, and they're probably about half the size of a sesame seed, so you may not even see them. The biggest way to protect yourself against them is to use repellents, anything with DEET in it or pyrethrum. You can spray it around the cuffs of your pants. A lot of times they will come up from the grass instead of down from the foliage. If you come indoors after being outside in an area where there are a lot of ticks, take a shower right away because they will wash off. A Lyme's disease tick has to be on for about 36 hours to transmit enough bacteria to cause the disease. So it's not something that happens real fast. Rocky Mountain spotted fever is the dog tick. It's the bigger tick that everybody's used to. It's the one you see all the time, the one that bites and holds on. You have to pull it off later. They can transmit the disease within about 6 hours. So it's a much quicker process. Yeah, the best thing to do when you find a tick is make sure you take it off. Try and get it so that when you pull it off, you don't squeeze it because you don't want to squeeze the blood back into your body because you can squeeze the bacteria in. If you get any kind of a rash after a tick bite, if you get any kind of a rash after being in an area where there are ticks, you need to get seen right away. Rocky Mountain spotted fever starts with a rash on the wrist, the ankles. It's kind of a pink rash. Can spread upward to where it actually gets on the trunk. If that pink rash starts to turn purple, that means the Rocky Mountain spotted fever has gone to a very, very much more serious disease process, and it can actually lead to hospitalization, long-term IV antibiotics. If you catch it early, there are antibiotics by mouth that will kill it, and it'll be gone. It won't be an issue. The problem is catching it. Now, the biggest hallmark with it is headache, fever, body aches. If you get anything like that in the summertime, it's unusual. It's not flu season. Very similar to flu symptoms. Even without the rash, you need to be seen and have it checked out because you need to be diagnosed as soon as possible and treated. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Lyme's disease, both need to be treated early on in order to eliminate all the side effects. If you get Lyme's disease, you don't necessarily have this bullseye type rash that you hear about all the time. Once you get that rash, your test for Lyme's disease can still be negative. There is a test we can run. What it does is looks for antibodies. It does not look for the bacteria itself. If your body hasn't produced the antibodies yet, the test is going to be negative. Doesn't mean you don't have the disease. You have to treat it on clinical suspicion, so you still treat that. The test may stay negative if you treat it early enough and you get rid of it and eradicate it, you may still have a negative test. If you don't catch it early and you do develop a positive Lyme's test, if that stays positive for years later, it does not mean you still have the disease. It doesn't mean it's still hiding in your body. It's not latent. It just means that your body still has antibodies against that bacteria. That can very easily happen and still get rid of the disease. If you get Lyme's disease, you don't treat it, you ignore the rash, it'll go away by itself eventually. If you ignore the body aches, so a lot of people just deal with it, put up with it, and it'll pass. But if you don't treat Lyme's disease, it will cause all kinds of problems down the road. It can cause numbness, tingling, heart disease, kidney disease. It can cause blood vessel disease. A lot of problems that are very, very difficult to treat, and antibiotics will not help with that once you get to that point. So it is something that needs to be addressed, something that you need to be aware of in the summertime and springtime, especially in an area that's rural. If you're out fishing, playing golf, tending gardens or crops, you have to be aware of the tick diseases that are present. There are a couple of other little problems that we have with ticks in the area, but those diseases aren't anywhere near as devastating as the other two. So anytime you get a rash, in the summertime or springtime, you get a fever or body aches, if it is consistent enough that it lasts more than a couple of days, you need to be checked out, you need to be evaluated. You need to actually push your doctor to do these tests and to be suspicious for these diseases. The State Health Department and the Centers for Disease Control have a lot of information out about Lyme's disease and tick-borne illnesses that's available. If you go to their website, you can look it up. Pay attention to any rashes you get. Pay attention to any ticks. Make sure you get them off. Make sure you get rid of them and get it treated. Does anybody have any questions about it? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask a question about like regular, bugs and things.
Okay.
Okay, if a bug, like it bites you and it starts swelling, what's the best thing to do for it?
If a bug bites you and you get some swelling from it, the best thing to do is probably a little local allergic reaction. The best thing to do for that would be some local hydrocortisone cream. Benadryl by mouth is the best antihistamine that's on the market. It's readily available. I have to be careful with Benadryl because it can make you pretty sleepy. It's usually the ingredient in most of the over-the-counter sleep medicines. So if you start to get a little local reaction like that, go ahead and start on some Benadryl, put some cortisone cream on it. Now, if it gets really red and swollen and starts to get hot, you can get an infection from any kind of bug bite. If you start to get an infection in it, you get some cellulitis, some redness, and heat on it, then you need to be seen so you can get on some antibiotics.
Oh, okay.
But as far as a little local allergic reaction, ice, Benadryl, cortisone cream should clear it up.
Okay.
Now you got to realize, too, that with bug bites and bee stings, I get this argument all the time. Working in the emergency room, people used to come in all the time and say, oh, you're having an allergy to a bee sting. They say, oh, I've been stung by bees all my life. I'm not allergic to them. All allergies are learned responses. Your body has to learn to be allergic to something. You have to be exposed to something at least once, but usually multiple times before you can develop an allergy. If you're allergic to penicillin, it didn't happen the first time you took penicillin. If you're allergic to bee stings, it's not going to happen the first time you're stung. It's going to happen after multiple stings or exposures where your body has antibodies circulating, and when you get stung, it recognizes that protein from the venom, and then you start that allergic response.
Yeah, well, I've been stung a lot. Bugs don't like me. My mother always tells me I eat too much sweet stuff sometimes. Is that true? And she tells me I'm sweet. Bugs like things that are sweet. Is that true?
I don't know you well enough to know if you're sweet.
Well, my mother told me that. I just thought I'd ask. I thought if what you ate had some type of role in when the bugs bite you. I don't know.
And actually, there's some truth to that. It's not, I don't think, the sweet part of it, but I know if you are in an area where there's a lot of mosquitoes. When I was in the Marine Corps, we were overseas in Southeast Asia. We used to eat a lot of garlic because your body would actually excrete garlic in your sweat, and that is a natural mosquito repellent, and that works really well to stop gnats, mosquitoes, things like that. So what you eat does help with things like that.
Okay. Thank you.
What's the best way to remove tick? I've heard all kinds of stuff.
Well, the best, everything I've read as far as removing ticks says to cut off their air supply, they'll back out. I have never, ever, ever been successful with that. I've smothered them with Vaseline, I've put kerosene on them, and I've never had one back out because I made him mad or cut off his air supply. If you take a pair of real fine-tipped tweezers and you get up underneath his body, and don't squeeze him with it, but close him up enough to where you can lift him up and pop him off. And then look at the bite itself and make sure there's no mouth parts left in there. You don't want to take tweezers and squeeze him and pull him off, or needle nose pliers and squeeze him and pull him off, because you're going to squeeze all of his body secretions back into the wound. But you get up underneath him and pop him up is the best way to take him off.
Would anything with alcohol make it back out?
I've been told it will, but I've never been lucky enough to get that to happen.
I never got one back out either.
I've never had them do it. And I've lit the match and put the hot match on their butt, and it still doesn't work. I've never made one mad enough to leave. Yes, sir.
Can you look at a tick and tell whether you get Lyme disease from it or not?
That's a great question, because I get all the time people would come in the ER and they bring the little tick with them and they say, this is a Lyme disease tick because it's got a white spot on it. Well,
I've heard that too.
it's not true. A lot of ticks have white spots, and deer ticks don't have white spots. The best way to tell whether it's a deer tick or not is by size. They're very, very, an adult deer tick at the biggest they'll ever get is smaller than a sesame seed. If you look at a sesame seed on a bun, those ticks are smaller than that at their absolute largest. About the size of a pinhead. And the nymphs are so small, you'll think they're mites.
That's Lyme disease.
Yes, sir. That's Lyme's disease. Dog tick is the regular tick that looks like a watermelon seed that you pull off your dog or your cat, or you find them on your ankle after you go fishing or something. Those are Rocky Mountain spots. They're not disease-free, but they're not something like Lyme's disease. Lyme's disease, they're sneaky because they'll feed and they'll go away. And you got to watch for them. The best defense against them is to shower after you're in an area where they're exposed. Wash them off really well.
Any other questions? They are taking it easy on you.
I'm surprised.
Me too. No other questions? Wow.
Yes, sir.
When you mention sea ticks, they are them things are so tiny and all, and you can walk, when you walk through grass with those, you can actually get a whole blob of them at one time.
I've seen seed ticks where I've walked through a field before, and I've seen seed ticks where I've taken my socks off and I've shook them out and I've got a pile of ticks afterwards. You have to be those are the deer ticks. Those are the ones you've got to watch for. They don't just live on deer, they live on field mice, they live on rabbits, all kinds of small mammals. Now, a lot of people are concerned about Lyme's disease because they're on all these animals. If they hunt and fish, whether or not they'll be in squirrel meat, rabbit meat, and venison. You can't. They've done a lot of research with Lyme disease. You can't catch it from eating infected animals. You can't catch it from another person. You can't catch it if you kiss somebody with it, or sexual intercourse is not a transmitted disease. You can't do that. But you have to get the bite of the tick. It's the only way it can be transmitted. All the research that's been done, the animals are safe. The food supply is fine. But you're right. If you walk through the grass, those seed ticks can be in clouds.
What's the worst one for?
The worst time for them is from the end of March probably through July. The worst part of that is in the center of it, probably around the end of May, beginning of June, because that's when the nymphs are out and they're so small you don't see them. That's when you'll come back and you'll have a rash on your belt line. They get in areas where your clothes are tight. The armpits, around the belt line. Women will get them around the bra line. Any place clothes are tight, the ticks will congregate there because they feel safe. They feel like it's a safe area to go and attach on the feed. So it's any place like that you have to be careful of. That's why if You get out of the field, you go shower, you have to watch all the body crevices, any creases, anything like that between your toes. Another problem is mites. I don't know if you've ever had mites or scabies, but they get in between your fingers and they itch horrible. And they're basically tunneling animals. They're like ticks. They're arachnids, but they get in and tunnel and they get in the skin and will drive you crazy, itching. You have to put poison on them to kill them. You've got to use an insecticide cream called Quell to get in there and kill those things. And it's the same type of problem. You have to watch for them, and you can't see these things. Sometimes you see chiggers or scabies or mites, the same type of thing. Sometimes you can see the little chiggers, but only when they're really full grown. The little babies you don't see. So you've got to watch for them. They're everywhere, and they're all over. Virginia, actually, looking at the statistics from last year, Greenville County, Brunswick County, and Southampton County had 0 cases of Lyme's disease. But it's all around us. Dinwiddie County was one of the highest states or highest counties in the state with Lyme's disease last year. So it's not like it's not out there because it is moving down. It's something that's moved from the northeast down this way. And when I worked at Fort Lee years and years ago, and it's when Lyme's disease first came out, those soldiers would go out in the field, they were coming in sick, nobody could figure out what it was. And it took us 3.5 months to get a Lyme's disease test back from Walter Reed. And those soldiers were gone to their permanent station by the time we found out what was wrong with them and could start treatment. So it's something that's really new to medical science. It's something that hasn't been around very long, and you have to really be vigilant with it. But the best part of it, the best way to prevent it is prevention. You have to stop it. You have to be careful whenever you're in an area with ticks.
What's the best way to do it with a chigger?
I have heard so many home remedies. Bleach doesn't work. Kerosene doesn't work. I've had people who put gasoline on it and light it. It doesn't work. The best way to get rid of them is Quell cream. It's an insecticide, prescription cream. You put it on at night, and what we'll tell you when you come in with them, we'll tell you to put it on from your chin all the way down to your toes. You cover everything. You go to bed, you sleep with that on you. You wake up the next morning, you strip your linens off your bed, you throw them in a hot washing machine, and go jump in the shower, and you wash all that cream off. And it's the only way, once they've embedded in the skin, it's the only way to get rid of them. And they do itch.
How long does it take for a Lyme disease test now?
A Lyme disease test now takes usually 48 hours. It's a lot quicker now. But again, early in the disease process, the test is going to be negative. If you come in and you've got the bullseye rash and you got the body aches, the headache, and the fever, we're going to treat you for Lyme's disease even though the test is negative.
Can a dog pick it up?
Dogs can pick it up. Dogs and cats can have Lyme's disease, but they cannot transmit it to human beings. Unless a tick bites them, they bring the tick in the house and the tick gets off them and bites you.
Any other questions? Well, we'd sure like to thank you for being here. I think your talk was very informative. For those of us who spend a lot of time outside, we appreciate that.